Welcome back to Wikipedia to fall asleep to. Let the day fall away, rest your mind, and drift off as we explore Mineral Point Railroad. The Mineral Point Railroad was a railroad company in the United States. It was established in 1852 to connect Mineral Point, Wisconsin, with the Illinois Central Railroad in Warren, Illinois. Partial service began in December 1856. The full line to Mineral Point opened in June 1857. The Milwaukee Road acquired the company in 1880. The last remnant of the company's lines was abandoned in the 1980s. History: the Mineral Point Railroad was incorporated April 17, 1852, to connect Mineral Point, Wisconsin, with the developing Midwestern Railroad network. Cyrus Woodman briefly served as the company's first president, before being succeeded by Moses M. Strong. The company considered building toward Janesville, Wisconsin, and a connection with the Milwaukee and Mississippi Railroad, a predecessor of the Milwaukee Road. The Milwaukee and Mississippi was not interested, so the company instead decided to build south to Warren, Illinois, where it could connect with the Illinois Central Railroad. After some difficulties, construction began in June 1856 under the supervision of Luther Beecher. The line opened between Warren and Darlington, Wisconsin, in December 1856. In 1857, Beecher succeeded Strong as company president. The line between Darlington and Mineral Point opened on June 16, 1857. Separately, interests in Platteville, Wisconsin, organized the Dubuque, Platteville, and Milwaukee Railroad. The Mineral Point Railroad constructed a 9.6-mile, 15.4 kilometers branch line from Calamine, Wisconsin, to Belmont, Wisconsin, in 1868. The Dubuque, Platteville, and Milwaukee Railroad built east from Platteville to Belmont, completing the 7.54-mile, 12.13 kilometers line in 1870. The Mineral Point Railroad acquired the Dubuque, Platteville, and Milwaukee on August 8, 1880. The Milwaukee Road acquired the Mineral Point Railroad on September 29, 1880. Lines: the Mineral Point Railroad's original main line ran 32.29 miles, 51.97 kilometers, north-south from Warren, Illinois, to Mineral Point, Wisconsin. The Milwaukee Road's branch to Schulzburg, Wisconsin, completed in 1881, bisected the line at Gratiot, Wisconsin, and the connection to the Illinois Central at Warren gradually lessened in importance. The Milwaukee Road abandoned the line between Gratiot and Warren in 1923. The remainder, incorporated into the Mineral Point branch, was sold to the state of Wisconsin in 1980 and eventually repurposed as the Cheese Country Trail. The branch from Calamine to Platteville, 16.9 miles, 27.2 kilometers, was abandoned in 1974. And now a new story begins. You Know How We Do It. You Know How We Do It is a song by American rapper, actor, and filmmaker Ice Cube, released as the second single from his fourth studio album, Lethal Injection. The song was released in 1994 by Lynch Mob and Priority Records, and was a number 30 hit on the U.S. Billboard Hot 100. Its music video was directed by Marcus Raboy and filmed in Las Vegas. Musically, the song is in the G-funk genre. You Know How We Do It samples The Show Is Over by Evelyn Champagne King, Summer Madness by Kool and the Gang, and Billie Jean by Michael Jackson. Critical reception. Larry Flick from Billboard magazine wrote, "Latest single from Cube's current album, Lethal Injection, is a laid-back jam in which he traces what life in his old neighborhood has become. Follow-up to Really Dough has the juice to easily sate the tastes of purists, but is also smooth enough to make considerable noise at pop and urban radio." Everett True from Melody Maker said, "This is more of that gorgeously smooth East Side/West Side funk that surely even the most staid of you are spending all your waking hours with by now, with sequenced vocals, gentle scratching, a mutha of a rhythm track, and a vocal as drop-dead and deaf me as you fall cool as you'd ever want." Alan Jones from Music Week gave it 3 out of 5, describing it as another mellow musical experience, his assured and rhythmic rap being intoned over a relaxing backwash enlivened by a squirting synth. Some dubious lyrics, but a nice summary track which deserves to score. Pan-European magazine Music and Media wrote, "There's a thin line between hip-hop and soul drawn here. Vocally, he's moving away from straightforward rapping to almost singing the lyrics. Will that be next year's fashion?" Paul Moody from NME named it Big Funky Single of the Week, adding, "A deep, oven-baked rhythm, a sample stolen from the wonderful The Show Is Over by Evelyn Champagne King, and then Ice himself, grumbling about how they wanna have me in stripes, like Dennis the Menace, and mumbling incoherently about the West Side. A funk record for people scared to funk, and a rap record for people who, yeah, you know." A monster hit. Tim Jeffrey from the Record Mirror Dance Update wrote, "A cool and lazy groove with lightly wailing vocals provide an excellent backdrop for Ice Cube's laconic rapping style. Not dance-a-floor material, but this evokes a great atmosphere." James Hamilton described it as Evelyn King sampling pleasant jazz-funkily rolling 92.7 BPM mellow LA rap in his weekly Record Mirror Dance column. The accompanying music video for You Know How We Do It was directed by American film and music video director Marcus Raboy and filmed in Las Vegas, Nevada. It features Ice Cube and his crew taking a trip to Las Vegas in a convertible Jaguar XJS and gambling in several Vegas casinos. The video won an award in the category for rap at the 1994 Music Video Production Awards in Los Angeles. In popular culture, Mariah Carey sampled You Know How We Do It in her song Irresistible West Side Connection from her 2002 album Charm Bracelet. It features Ice Cube as part of the hip-hop supergroup The West Side Connection, which also included Mac 10 and WC. The song was also featured in the film Sonic the Hedgehog 2 and Grand Theft Auto V. Track listing: You Know How We Do It, You Know How We Do It instrumental, 2 in the Morning, 2 in the Morning instrumental. Our next topic tonight is Scott M. Matheson. Scott Milne Matheson, Jr., was an American politician who served as the 12th governor of Utah from 1977 to to 1985. He is the most recent Democrat to serve in that position. Biography: Matheson was born on January 8, 1929, in Chicago to parents belonging to the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, Scott Milne and Adele Adams Matheson. Soon after his birth, the family moved to Utah, settling first in Parowan before moving to Salt Lake City when his father became United States Attorney for the District of Utah. Matheson graduated from Salt Lake City's East High School in 1946, earned a bachelor's degree in political science from the University of Utah in 1950, and a law degree from Stanford University Law School in 1952. He operated a private law practice in Iron County, Utah, for 5 years before taking a position with Union Pacific Railroad in 1958. During his service with the railroad, he rose to the position of general counsel before making his 1976 run for governor. Matheson defeated Republican nominee Vernon B. Romney by a 52%, 46% margin, with two minor candidates combining for the remaining 2% of the vote. Matheson would be re-elected in 1980 over Republican Bob Wright by a strong 55%, 44% margin, even as Republican presidential candidate Ronald Reagan and Republican U.S. Senator Jake Garn easily carried Utah in their elections held the same day. During his term as governor, Matheson was named the defendant in the U.S. Supreme Court case of H.L. v. Matheson, which upheld a state law requiring parental consent for a teenage girl to obtain an abortion. He was also chair of the National Governors Association during the 1982 to 1983 term. In 1986, Matheson considered a bid for the U.S. Senate to challenge incumbent Orrin Hatch in 1988. Despite leading in hypothetical polling, Matheson announced on May 29, 1987, that he would not run for the seat. Hatch would ultimately be re-elected in a landslide over Democrat Brian H. Moss, who had never held political office. Personal life and death: on August 25, 1951. He married Norma Louise Wernski, and the couple had 4 children. One of his sons is former U.S. Congressman Jim Matheson. Another son, Scott Matheson Jr., was the Democratic nominee for governor of Utah in the 2004 election and was appointed as a federal judge in 2010. In 1989, Matheson was diagnosed with multiple myeloma, a rare form of cancer believed to have been caused by radioactive fallout from nuclear testing in Nevada. Scott Matheson died from the disease on October 7, 1990, at the age of 61. Matheson's death occurred during the General Conference of the LDS Church and was honored by then-Apostle Gordon B. Hinckley at the beginning of the Sunday morning session. He was buried in Parowan City Cemetery in Parowan, Utah. And now a new story begins. Axelle Lemaire. Axelle Lemaire is a French former socialist politician who served as a deputy for the 3rd constituency for French overseas residents in the National Assembly of the French Parliament, for which she was elected in 2012. In May 2014, Prime Minister Manuel Valls appointed her to the French Finance Ministry as minister responsible for digital affairs. In February 2017, she resigned from her ministry to run unsuccessfully for a second deputy mandate. Education and personal life. Lemaire was born in Ottawa, Ontario, to a French mother and a Quebecois father. After being brought up in Hull, Quebec, where she attended College Saint Joseph de Hull, Lemaire lived as a teenager in Montpellier. She studied modern literature and political science at the Sciences Po. She earned law degrees at the Pantheon-Assas University, D. 2000, and at King's College Dixon Poon School of Law LLM, 2003. Lemaire subsequently taught legal studies at university level and worked in a law firm, before working at the British House of Commons as a researcher for the former Labour MP and Minister Denis MacShane. Lemaire lived in London with her husband and 2 children from 2002 to 2014, before relocating to Paris. Political career. Lemaire served as secretary of the French Socialist Party, PS, in London from 2008 until her election to the National Assembly in 2012. According to Le Point, she turned down a ministerial post in Jean-Marc Ayrault's second government because, as a mother of 2 young children, she had no desire to leave London. She has served as chair of the UK-France Parliamentary Friendship Group. She did, however, accept an appointment as Minister of State for Digital Affairs in Valls' new government in April 2014. Member of the National Assembly, in 2012, Lemaire was returned as deputy for one of the 11 newly created constituencies, each elected by French overseas citizens to the French National Assembly. The constituency she represented as inaugural deputy includes all registered French citizens living in the 10 countries throughout Northern Europe, Iceland, Norway, Denmark, including the Faroe Islands and Greenland, Sweden, Finland, Great Britain and Northern Ireland, Ireland, Estonia, Latvia, and Lithuania. As of 2011, it recorded 140,731 French citizens on its electoral roll, with the vast majority living in the United Kingdom, which has the 3rd largest French expat population in the world. Consequently, her election campaign received considerable attention at the time from the British press. Having won 55% of the vote, during her term as deputy, she regularly appeared in the British media regarding French politics. In May 2014, upon assuming French governmental ministerial office, Lemaire resigned her parliamentary seat and was succeeded by Christophe Primat, Secretary of State for Digital Affairs, upon joining the Ministry for the Economy, Industry, and Digital Affairs in Paris. Lemaire had been a leading proponent of net neutrality legislation. She was involved in the French tech movement, which unites French digital startups worldwide. She resigned from the position in February 2017 to focus on the Socialist Party's candidate campaign for French presidential election. She then joined the campaign to retain her seat in the French Parliament, but was severely defeated by Alexander Holroyd of La République in March. Post-politics, in February 2018, Lemaire took a job with the consulting firm Roland Berger. Let us drift gently now toward Old English Bible translations. The Old English Bible translations are the partial translations of the Bible, prepared in medieval England into the Old English language. The translations are from Latin texts, not the original languages. Many of these translations were in fact Bible glosses, prepared to assist clerics whose grasp of Latin was imperfect, and circulated in connection with the Vulgate Latin Bible that was standard in Western Christianity at the time. Old English was one of very few early medieval vernacular languages the Bible was translated into in the European West, and featured a number of incomplete Bible translations, some of which were meant to be circulated, like the Paris Psalter or Aelfric's Hexateuch. Early history information about translations is limited before the Synod of Whitby in 664. Aldhelm, Bishop of Sherborne and Abbot of Malmesbury, is said to have written an Old English translation of the Psalms, although this is disputed. Keedman, 657 to 684, is mentioned by Bede as one who sang poems in Old English based on the Bible stories, but he was not involved in translation per se. Bede, around 672 to 735, produced a translation of the Gospel of John into Old English, which he is said to have prepared shortly before his death. This translation is lost. We know of its existence from Cuthbert of Jarrow's account of Bede's death. The Vespasian Psalter, 850 to 875, is an interlinear gloss of the Book of Psalms in the Mercian dialect. 11 other Anglo-Saxon, and 2 later, psalters with Old English glosses are known. The earliest are probably the early 9th century red glosses of the Blickling Psalter, Morgan Library and Museum, M. 776. The latest Old English gloss is contained in the 12th century Eadwine Psalter. The Old English material in the Tiberius Psalter of around 1050 includes a continuous interlinear gloss of the Psalms. As England was consolidated under the House of Wessex, led by descendants of Alfred the Great and Edward the Elder, translations continued. King Alfred circulated a number of passages of the Bible in the vernacular. These included passages from the 10 Commandments and the Pentateuch, which he prefixed to a code of laws he promulgated around this time. Alfred is also said to have directed the Book of Psalm to have been translated into Old English, though scholars are divided on Alfredian authorship of the Paris Psalter collection of the first 50 Psalms. In approximately 990, a full and freestanding version of the 4 Gospels in idiomatic Old English appeared in the West Saxon dialect and are known as the Wessex Gospels. 7 manuscript copies of this translation have survived. This translation gives us the most familiar Old English version of Matthew 6, 9-13, the Lord's Prayer. Feeder your thu the eart on hiaphanum, see thin nama jehel God. To becum thin rice, juerth thin willa, on air than swa on hiaphanum. Earn jedi gwamlik and hslaf silas tadig, and forgif us your jiltas, swa we forgifath urum jiltendum. And ni gelid thu us on costnunge, ac alleys us of Ifel. Izothlis. Gospels from the south, east, and north between 950 and 970 Aldred the scribe added a gloss in the Northumbrian dialect of Old English, the Northumbrian gloss on the Gospels, to the Cassiodorian Vulgate Latin Lindisfarne Gospels, as well as a foreword describing who wrote and decorated it. Its version of the Lord's Prayer is as follows: Sui than iui jai bid fader ura thu arth thu bist in hiophnum and in hiopnas, si jehelgad noma thin, to simeth rick thin. Si willow thin sui is in hiopni and in air though. H laugh usern o for whistlick sell us to deeg. And forjef a silda usra sui uo, forjef in sildgum usum. And ni inlid usi in costunge a jeffrig usage from Iffle at around the same time, tilde 950 to 970. The Northumbrian glosses were transferred to the Irish Vulgate Latin Rushworth Gospels, except a priest named Farman wrote a Wessex or Mercian gloss for the Gospel of Matthew and some of John. At about the same time as the Wessex Gospels, tilde 990, the priest Aelfric of Eynsham produced an independent translation of the Pentateuch with books of Joshua and Judges. His translations were used for the illustrated Old English Hexateuch. Seemingly unrelated to Aelfric's translation are two versions of the Gospels, the three related manuscripts, Royal 1a, Roman 14 at the British Library, Bodley 441, and Hatton 38 at the Bodleian Library, are written in Old English, with at least one manuscript being produced in the late 12th century. Hatton 38 is noted as being written in the latest Kentish form of West Saxon. They cover the four Gospels with one section, Luke 16, 14 to 17, one missing from both manuscripts, Hatton and Royal. Three other manuscripts and 5 fragments also contain text of Old English Gospels, not necessarily the same recension, from the late 900s. Late Anglo-Saxon translations, after 1000, the Junius manuscript was copied about 1000. It includes biblical material in vernacular verses, Genesis in 2 versions, Genesis A and Genesis B, Exodus, Daniel and Christ and Satan, from the apocryphal Gospel of Nicodemus. In 1066, the Norman conquest marked the beginning of the end of the Old English language. Translating the Bible into Old English gradually ended with the movement from Old English to Middle English, and eventually there were attempts to provide Middle English Bible translations. When you are ready, we move on to Vallemaggia District. The Vallemaggia District is a district of the canton of Ticino in Switzerland, bordering the Leventina district to the northwest, the Locarno district to the southeast, and Italy to the west. It encompasses 8 municipalities and has a population of 5,952. The capital of the district is Sevio. Although it extends over approximately 1/5 of the cantonal territory, only about 2% of the Ticino population lived there in 2000. The district is traversed by the Maggia and its tributaries Bavona and Ravenna, and is characterized by 2 distinct regions. The Vallemaggia comprises the lower valley and the upper valleys, Ravenna Valley, Bavona Valley, and Lavizzara Valley. The lower valley, relatively wide, extends from Avegno to Cavagno with minimal elevation changes. The upper valleys are narrow gorges that open into the main valley at Sevio and Bignasco, and are surrounded by imposing mountains. Geography: the Vallemaggia District has an area as of 1997 of 569.42 square kilometers, 219.85 sq mi. Of this area, 9.61 square kilometers, 3.71 sq mi, or 1.7% is used for agricultural purposes, while 240.5 square kilometers, 92.9 sq mi, or 42.2% is forested. Of the rest of the land, 6.57 square kilometers, 2.54 sq mi, or 1.2% is settled buildings or roads. 15.46 square kilometers, 5.97 sq mi, or 2.7% is either rivers or lakes, and 244.24 square kilometers, 94.30 sq mi, or 42.9% is unproductive land. Of the built-up area, housing and buildings made up 0.4%, and transportation infrastructure made up 0.4%. Out of the forested land, 31.4% of the total land area is heavily forested, and 4.8% is covered with orchards or small clusters of trees. Of the agricultural land, 1% is used for growing crops. Of the water in the district, 0.7% is in lakes, and 2.0% is in rivers and streams. Of the unproductive areas, 18.9% is unproductive vegetation, and 24.0% is too rocky for vegetation. Prehistoric and Roman periods: isolated findings from the Copper Age attest to prehistoric occupation of the valley. During Romanization, from the final Latin period to the Augustan era, the population was distributed throughout Vallemaggia. Despite its geographical isolation, the valley was connected to the vicus of Muralto. Humans began transforming the landscape through terracing and the introduction of chestnut and walnut trees during the Roman period. Middle Ages: during the Middle Ages, Vallemaggia shared the history of the Pieve of Locarno and depended on the Church of St. Victor of Locarno until around the year 1000, when Maggia, Sornico, and Sevio became parishes. Gradually, isolated neighborhood communities, vicinands, were incorporated into larger units. In the 14th century, Bignasco, Cavregno, Brontalo, and Menzonio formed an administrative entity, as did the villages of Lavizzara and Ravana. Sevio, Cavregno, Campo, Sarentino, and Bosco constituted the Rona Superior. In 1398, the valleys of Maggia and Verzesca, along with Murgasia, rebelled against the taxes that the nobles of Locarno, who held fiefs in the region, continuously demanded. They formally separated from the community of Locarno in 1403 and created an independent jurisdiction centered in Sevio, with a general council of 42 members and statutes. Several conflicts marked the coexistence of local communities. The dispute that opposed the lower valley communes to Sevio and Val Ravana at the beginning of the 15th century ended with the signing of a treaty in 1403/1404. Vallemaggia attempted to escape the authority of the Duchy of Milan by allying with the House of Savoy, but was occupied by the Confederates, before returning to Milan and passing to the Rusca family. Around 1430, Val Lavazara obtained from the Duchy of Milan an independent jurisdiction from Vallemaggia. Swiss Confederation period from 1513 to 1798, Vallemaggia constituted a bailiwick of the 12 cantons, the 13 except Appenzell, and bore the German name of Mayenthal or Mainthal. Other variants are also attested. The bailiwick was divided into two communities, Valles Maggia and Lavazara, each possessing its own statutes, assemblies, and officers. It was subject to the authority of a bailiff and a fiscal. The former chose his place of residence, Sevio or Sornico, but had to travel regularly to the other administrative center to administer justice with the help, in the most serious cases, of local assistant judges. The community of Val Lavazara defended its autonomy from that of Vallemaggia and sabotaged the attempts of some bailiffs to establish the tribunal solely in Sevio and the project of the Sindacato, composed of delegates from the 12 cantons, to suppress the assistant judges. Integrated into the canton of Lugano under the Helvetic Republic, Vallemaggia became one of the districts of the canton of Ticino in 1803, with Sevio as its administrative center. Economic development and emigration during the Middle Ages and the modern era. The economy was primarily based on agriculture, cultivation of cereals, potatoes, and flax, viticulture, and livestock farming of small animals. For centuries, Vallemaggia exported significant quantities of cheese. Forests constituted an important resource and were often overexploited, which had disastrous environmental consequences. Handicrafts, wool spinning, weaving, woodworking, the soapstone industry, and in the second half of the 19th century, the marble and gneiss industries were among the complementary activities. Strong emigration, already attested in the Middle Ages, toward the Locarno region and Sotosnary, also helped improve the standard of living. Population growth, which probably reached its maximum around the mid-18th century, gave rise to a first wave of emigration, often periodic or seasonal masons, stonemasons, grooms, merchants, and artists, active in various European cities. This relieved demographic pressure and allowed relative well-being. Around 1850, inhabitants left to settle overseas, often permanently, particularly in California and Australia, due to difficult economic conditions. Customs union following the creation of the federal state, retaliation from the Kingdom of Lombardy, Venetia attached to Austria, and worsening weather conditions. This exodus caused significant depopulation of the region and demographic imbalances. Gender ratio, population aging, low birth rate, high celibacy rate. The phenomenon had lasting effects and caused a decline in agricultural productivity, leading to new departures, particularly affecting the most isolated communes. Modern developments after World War II, the trend reversed slightly. However, the demographic evolution of the lower valley, which benefited from the relative proximity of the economic center of Locarno and experienced suburban development in the last decades of the 20th century, must be clearly distinguished from that of the upper valleys, which was much more problematic. At the beginning of the 21st century, Val Ravana, which lost 3/4 of its population between 1860 and 1980, and Val Bavona seemed destined to become primarily vacation regions. In Val Lavizzara, the demographic decline was less pronounced. A carriageable road to Bignasco was only built between 1814 and 1824, which reduced the isolation of Vallemaggia, especially in winter. The Locarno, Pont-Brala-Bignasco railway line, opened in 1907, played an important role in the development of quarries, dismantled in 1965. The exploitation of waters from the Maggia Basin, begun around 1950, caused several environmental problems. It became very important and helped slow rural exodus through the creation of some jobs. 9 power plants produced a total of approximately 611 megawatts in 2010. Since the 1970s, tourism has taken an increasingly important place in the economy of Vallemaggia, as evidenced by the sharp increase in secondary residences. Demographics of the Swiss national languages. As of 2000, 477 speak German, 88 people speak French, 4,814 people speak Italian, and 12 people speak Romansh. The remainder, 202 people, speak another language. As of 2008, the gender distribution of the population was 49, 2% male and 8% female. The population was made up of 2,532 Swiss men, 43, 1% of the population, and 356 1% non-Swiss men. There were 2,731 Swiss women, 46, 5%, and 252 3% non-Swiss women. In 2008, there were 38 live births to Swiss citizens and 2 births to non-Swiss citizens, and in same time span there were 57 deaths of Swiss citizens and 5 non-Swiss citizen deaths. Ignoring immigration and emigration, the population of Swiss citizens decreased by 19, while the foreign population decreased by 3. There were 3 Swiss men and 20 Swiss women who immigrated back to Switzerland. At the same time, there were 25 non-Swiss men and 10 non-Swiss women who immigrated from another country to Switzerland. The total Swiss population change in 2008, from all sources, was an increase of 9, and the non-Swiss population change was a decrease of 2 people. This represents a population growth rate of 1%. The age distribution, as of 2009, in the Vallemaggia District is 518 children or 8% of the population are between 0 and 9 years old, and 667 teenagers or 4% are between 10 and 19. Of the adult population, 565 people or 6% of the population are between 20 and 29 years old. 656 people or 2% are between 30 and 39, 962 people or 4% are between 40 and 49, and 859 people or 6% are between 50 and 59. The senior population distribution is 729 people or 4% of the population are between 60 and 69 years old, 493 people or 4% are between 70 and 79, There are 422 people or 7.2% who are over 80. In 2000, there were 7,245 single-family homes, or 81% of the total, out of a total of 9,049 inhabited buildings. There were 972 two-family buildings, 10.7%, and 533 multi-family buildings, 5.9%. There were also 299 buildings in the district that were multipurpose buildings, used for both housing and commercial or another purpose. In 2000, there were 4,844 apartments in the district. The most common apartment size was the 4-room apartment, of which there were 1,334. There were 400 single-room apartments and 1,203 apartments with 5 or more rooms. Of these apartments, a total of 2,195 apartments, 45.3% of the total, were permanently occupied, while 2,620 apartments, 54.1%, were seasonally occupied and 29 apartments, 0.6%, were empty. The historical population is given in the following table. Politics. In the 2007 federal election, the most popular party was the FDP, which received 29.82% of the vote. The next 3 most popular parties were the CVP, 28.74%, the SB, 17.31%, and the Ticino League, 12.2%. In the federal election, a total of 1,907 votes were cast, and the voter turnout was 45.8%. In the 2007 Ticino Grand Consiglio election, there were a total of 4,190 registered voters in the Vallemaggia District, of which 2,778, or 66.3%, voted. 28 blank ballots were cast, leaving 2,750 valid ballots in the election. The most popular party was the PPD plus Gen Giova, which received 693, or 25.2% of the vote. The next 3 most popular parties were the SSI with 564, or 20.5%, the PLRT with 511, or 18.6%, and the PS with 436, or 15.9%. In the 2007 Ticino Consiglio di Stato election, 22 blank ballots and 9 null ballots were cast, leaving 2,747 valid ballots in the election. The most popular party was the PPD, which received 701, or 25.5% of the vote. The next 3 most popular parties were the Lega with 518, or 18.9%, the PS with 511, or 18.6%, and the PLRT with 484, or 17.6%. Religion. From the 2000 census, 4,575, or 81.8%, were Roman Catholic, while 319, or 5.7%, belonged to the Swiss Reformed Church. There are 441 individuals, or about 7.88% of the population, who belong to another church not listed on the census, and 258 individuals, or about 4.61% of the population, did not answer the question. Education. In the Vallemaggia District, there was a total of 1,005 students as of 2009. The Ticino education system provides up to 3 years of non-mandatory kindergarten, and in the Vallemaggia District, there were 135 children in kindergarten. The primary school program lasts for 5 years and includes both a standard school and a special school. In the district, 302 students attended the standard primary schools, and 7 students attended the special school. In the lower secondary school system, students either attend a 2-year middle school followed by a 2-year pre-apprenticeship, or they attend a 4-year program to prepare for higher education. There were 267 students in the 2-year middle school and 2 in their pre-apprenticeship, while 86 students were in the 4-year advanced program. The upper secondary school includes several options, but at the end of the upper secondary program, a student will be prepared to enter a trade or to continue on to a university or college. In Ticino, vocational students may either attend school while working on their internship or apprenticeship, which takes 3 or 4 years, or may attend school followed by an internship or apprenticeship, which takes 1 year as a full-time student or 1.5 to 2 years as a part-time student. There were 53 vocational students who were attending school full-time, and 132 who attend part-time. The professional program lasts 3 years and prepares a student for a job in engineering, nursing, computer science, business, tourism, and similar fields. There were 21 students in the professional program. Cities: the district has 8 municipalities, namely Bosco Gurin, Campo, Serentino, Sevio, and Laincio in the Ravana Valley, and Maggia and Avegno Gordivio in the Val Maggia, as well as Lavizzara in the Val Lavizzara. Our next topic tonight is La Comédie du bonheur. La Comédie du bonheur, the Comedy of Happiness, is a French-Italian film directed by Marcel Lherbier as a dual-language production. It was filmed in Rome in the early months of 1940, but after Italy joined World War II on the side of Germany, the French and Italian versions of the film were completed separately. The Italian version was released in December 1940 under the title Ecco la felicità. Here's Happiness. The French version was released in July 1942. Plot: when the wealthy banker François Jourdain tries to spend his money on philanthropic causes, his relatives have him committed to a psychiatric clinic to save their inheritance. During Mardi Gras celebrations, Jourdain escapes and takes up residence in the Pension Beau Soleil, a run-down boarding house in Nice inhabited by several unhappy individuals, including the owner's shy daughter Lydia, the suicidal Russian exile Fedor, and the embittered spinster Miss Aglaé. Jourdain hires some actors from the local theater to play roles in real life at the boarding house, which will transform the lives of everyone, illustrating his principle: to create the happiness of others is difficult, but it's enough to create the illusion of happiness. The leading actor and tenor Felix courts Lydia and makes her feel loved. His wife Anita awakens the interest of Fedor, and Deribin overcomes his aversion to Aglaé and listens to her complaints. Meanwhile, Jourdain's relatives have offered a large reward for his recapture, and the police are searching for him. To bring his scheme to its completion, Jourdain organizes a fancy dress ball which culminates in an invasion of the local studios of Radio Azur by all the masked revelers, and a succession of mistaken identities, tricks and unmaskings results in the confused satisfaction of almost everyone. But Jourdain has to surrender himself and return to the asylum. Cast Mitchell Simon as Francois Jourdain / Giambattista Giordano, Ramon Novarro as Felix / Felicity, Micheline Presley as Lydia / Lydia Jacqueline de Lubac, as Anita / Annetta, Louis Jourdan as Fedor / Fedoro Sylvie, as Madame Marie, André Alerme as Derubin Magdalene, Beyrubit as Miss Aglaé / Eggle, Marcel Vallée as Dr. Acario, Renee Gainan, Eve Francis as Madame Estella, the fortune-teller Jack Catalane as the director of Radio Azur production, Marcel L. Herbier, had wanted for many years to make a film from Nikolai Evrenov's 1921 play Samo Glavno which, as La Comédie du bonheur, had enjoyed success on stage in the 1920s in France and elsewhere. He had obtained the author's approval for his ideas on how to adapt it, and in 1930, L. Herbier had signed a contract with a producer to make the film as the second of a two-film deal. However, in the event, financial difficulties obliged the producer to default on the deal. It was another 10 years before circumstances allowed the project to proceed with a new producer, André Paulvé, and it did so under the imminent threat of World War II breaking out in Europe. A co-production was planned with the Italian company Scalera to be filmed at their studios in Rome. A prestigious cast was assembled led by Mitchell Simon, and it included early appearances by Micheline Presley and Louis Jourdan, his first completed film. The Mexican-American star of silent films Ramon Novarro also joined the company for one of the few films that he made outside Hollywood. Filming began in Rome in March 1940 and proceeded smoothly, while the phony war continued between France and Germany, but Italy had not yet joined the war. In early May, however, the French ambassador in Rome warned L. Herbier that Italy's declaration of war was imminent, and it became necessary for the French actors and technicians to make their arrangements to leave the country as soon as possible, with some of their contributions to the film unfinished. The film negative remained in Rome, and it subsequently suffered some damage in a fire. An Italian-language version of the film was completed later in the year, and it was released in Italy in December 1940 under the title Ecco la felicità. The credits list only the Italian contributors to it, except for the director and the 4 principal actors. In addition to the cinematographer Massimo Terzano, the camera operator is listed as Mario Bava. Back in occupied France, L. Herbier was unable to do anything more with the film until more than a year later, when the film was secretly returned to him from Rome. He then sought to complete filming of the missing parts, reassembling the actors who were still available and resorting to special effects for those who were not. The material was carefully edited and fine-tuned to bring his long-cherished but much thwarted project to fruition, and it was released in Paris in July 1942. This French version of La Comédie du bonheur consequently shows significant differences from the Italian Ecco la felicità in the filming and editing of some sequences, and in some instances the casting. Reception, the French release of the film coincided with that of another film which Marcel L. Herbier had completed in the meantime, La Nuit Fantastique. Both films were comedies, which gave contemporary reviews the opportunity to make direct comparison between them. The performances of Micheline Presley, who appeared in both films, and of Mitchell Simon in La Comédie du bonheur, were singled out for particular praise. Next, we turn softly to Basaloid squamous cell lung carcinoma. Basaloid squamous cell carcinoma, BAS-SQCC, is an uncommon histological variant of lung cancer composed of cells exhibiting cytological and tissue architectural features of both squamous cell lung carcinoma and basal cell carcinoma. Classification lung cancer is a large and exceptionally heterogeneous family of malignancies. Over 50 different histological variants of lung cancer are explicitly recognized within the fourth revision of the World Health Organization classification of lung tumors, WHO 2004. Many of these entities are quite rare, have only been recently described, and remain poorly understood. Basaloid forms of lung carcinoma were first described in the peer-reviewed medical literature by Dr. Elizabeth Brambilla and her colleagues in 1992. In the third revision of the World Health Organization Lung Tumor Typing and Classification Scheme, published in 1999, basaloid variants of both squamous cell lung carcinoma, SQCC, and large cell lung carcinoma, LCLC, were recognized as distinct entities. In the fourth revision of the WHO system, currently the world standard, BAS-SQCC is classified as one of 4 recognized variants of squamous cell lung carcinoma. As a variant of SQCC, it is considered a non-small cell lung cancer, NSCLC. Pathogenesis both basaloid and squamous cell carcinomas have been shown to arise from premalignant lesions of dysplasia in the airways of the lung. Diagnosis, like other forms of lung cancer, BAS-SQCC is ultimately diagnosed after a pathologist examines a tumor sample containing viable malignant cells and tissue under a light microscope and identifies certain particular characteristics. In the case of BAS-SQCC, it is essential that both evidence of squamous differentiation, that is, intercellular bridges, production of keratin, tonofilament bundles, and basaloid architecture are identified to make a correct diagnosis. Immunohistochemical markers that have been suggested to be useful in making an accurate diagnosis of BAS-SQCC include positivity for p63 and high molecular weight keratin, that is 34 beta E12, and lack of expression of thyroid transcription factor 1, TTF1. Among other pulmonary malignancies, the main differential diagnoses in suspected cases of BAS-SQCC include the high-grade neuroendocrine carcinomas, such as small cell carcinoma and large cell neuroendocrine carcinoma. The issue of differential diagnosis is particularly acute when the pathologist must use a small biopsy specimen or cytology. In addition, the basaloid variant of SQCC can be difficult to distinguish from other poorly differentiated squamous cell carcinomas. Treatment for last several decades of the 20th century All histological variants of NSCLC were generally treated identically. In the last decade, it has become apparent that different variants of malignant tumors generally exhibit diverse genetic, biological, and clinical properties, including response to treatment. As patients with uncommon lung tumor variants, including tumors composed of mixtures of histological subtypes, tend to be excluded from clinical trials, the most efficacious treatment regimen for basaloid squamous cell carcinoma remain unknown. In general, these variants appear to be treated according to standard protocols in place for squamous cell carcinoma. Prognosis, like nearly all other forms of NSCLC, the prognosis of basaloid squamous cell carcinoma is quite poor. Although case numbers tend to be rather small and the published studies statistically underpowered, much, but not all, evidence suggests that basaloid squamous cell lung carcinomas may have a somewhat worse prognosis than conventional, that is, non-basaloid squamous cell lung carcinomas. As survival has been noted to be worse in basaloid variants at earlier tumor stages, that is, stages I and Roman II, the decreased survival could be attributable to earlier distant metastases appearing during the natural history of these tumors, as compared to other squamous cell carcinomas and NSCLC in general. Epidemiology, the true incidence and prevalence of basaloid squamous cell lung carcinoma, remains unknown, but this form of lung cancer is considered relatively uncommon. In one of the largest studies of this particular variant, Mauro Cibollat and co-workers found a 6.3% prevalence of BAS-SQCC among 18 consecutive NSCLC patients at their institution. Basaloid carcinomas of the lung, like nearly all recognized variants of lung cancer, are highly associated with tobacco smoking. Basaloid architecture in pulmonary carcinomas has been shown to be particularly prevalent in smokers with heavy exposure, and squamous cell carcinoma has the strongest association with tobacco exposure than any other major cell type of NSCLC. As compared to other forms of lung cancer, BAS-SQCC often occurs in those who are somewhat older than average. Basaloid squamous cell carcinoma usually begins centrally, in the larger proximal bronchi. Basaloid carcinoma primary in the lung may also occur in a multicentric form. And now a new story begins. Chronicles of the Absurd. Chronicles of the Absurd is a 2024 Cuban documentary film directed by Miguel Coyula. It held its world premiere at the International Documentary Film Festival Amsterdam, where it won the award for Best Film at the Envision competition. Plot: when independent filmmaker Miguel Coyula casts actor Lynn Cruz in his dystopian feature Blue Heart in 2011. It marks the beginning of a professional as well as a romantic bond. It is also the starting point of this documentary, exposing a range of disturbing interactions the artist subsequently had with a wide variety of institutions and individuals. In true Kafkaesque fashion, oppression looms everywhere. Even outside of Cuba, from a reverse ideology, they are met with similar dogmatism by critics of the Cuban regime. Reception. Chronicles of the Absurd has received critical praise. Dutch newspaper Het Parool described it as a Kafkaesque masterpiece. At Los Experimentos, Pablo Gamba wrote, Chronicles of the Absurd is also a documentary about the commitment and courage of sincere friendship, love, and solidarity. Documentary magazine's Nicholas Rappold called it a fascinating dispatch that freely tests audiovisual bounds of documentary. In his review at J.B. Spins, Joe Bendel observed that the film would be quite amusing in a farcical and aptly absurd way, if it were also not so Orwellian. They use cleverly monstrous-looking stand-in icons and slyly selected photos for bureaucrats with an online footprint, creating dramatic montages. Despite the scarcity of actual video, Absurd is quite visually dynamic, to a genuinely surprising degree. At Impulse magazine, Ben Burton wrote, Coyula collapses the boundaries between the personal, the artistic, the intellectual, and the political in part by threading together interrogations, family illness, and festival tours across vast periods. The way they are edited together makes these categories inescapable from each other. This makes the film both incredibly specific about life, art creation, and politics within Cuba, but an equally poignant testimony to the reason why film is such an essential medium. At Gay City News, Steve Erickson noted that the film seems less foreign after the Trump administration's takeover of the Kennedy Center. Even in authoritarian societies, the arts have been a means to speak about undercurrents of unease and rebellion. Susan Morris at Design Observer felt that words are enhanced with graphics and colors, and with photos of the artists in a style inspired by late 1980s, early 90s role-playing video game grids with multiple characters. We don't know what the officials conducting the interrogations look like, so Coyula uses figures from expressionist painter Antonia Iris's Edvard Munch/Francisco Goya, like grotesques, to emphasize their absurd, surreal behavior. Andrew Truong at Reverse Shot wrote, The very existence of this brash film, which reveals the hearts of darkness at the center of Cuba's cultural institutions, is proof that creative expression may be hindered or sometimes stalled, but it can never be stopped. Both Chronicles of the Absurd and Corazon Azul are intentionally provocative films that expose the mental gymnastics that uphold an illiberal society. They exemplify the irrepressible spirit of artistic creation, proof that someone is fighting the system from within. The closing title card in Chronicles of the Absurd is Coyula's ultimate act of defiance, Made in Cuba. Awards Envision Competition Award for Best Film, IDFA, the Netherlands. 2024 Special Jury Prize, Bafisai, Argentina. 2025 Best Non-Fiction Film, Cinema Tropical, United States. 2026. And now a new story begins. White, White Dove. White, White Dove is a song by the British rock band Steve Harley and Cockney Rebel, released on 6th of February 1976 as the second and final single from their fourth studio album, Timeless Flight. The song was written and produced by Harley. Background as the second single to be released from Timeless Flight, White, White Dove followed the commercial failure of Black or White, which failed to enter the UK singles chart when released in November 1975. White Dove was released shortly after Timeless Flight, but despite the album's top 20 success in the UK, White Dove also failed to reach the UK top 50. It did, however, reach number 6 in the UK Star Breakers chart on 13th of March 1976. White Dove was recorded at Trident Studios in London and remixed and cut at Abbey Road Studios, London. The song features Lindsay Elliott, the younger brother of the band's drummer Stuart Elliott, on congas. Release White Dove was released by EMI Records as a 7-inch single in the UK, Germany, Belgium, Portugal, and Australia. The UK promotional and Australian releases featured an edit of White Dove, which cut the album version down by over a minute. The single's B-side, Throw Your Soul Down Here, was written and produced by Harley. It was exclusive to the single and remained so until it was included as a bonus track on the 1991 EMI CD release of Timeless Flight. The song was recorded at AIR Studios, London, after the Timeless Flight sessions. It features Herbie Flowers on double bass and B. They. Robertson on piano. Promotion to promote the single, the band performed the song live on the UK ITV music program Supersonic. Critical reception upon its release as a single. Ray Fox Cumming of Record Mirror and Disc predicted the song would be a hit. He commented, "I was not convinced that this was the best track to be single number 2 from Timeless Flight, but now, edited down, it does make sense." It's still not one of Harley's strongest songs, but the funky guitar patterns, well-paced vocal and sterling production all helped to make it man enough for the job of chart breaching. Caroline Kuhn of Melody Maker was positive of the song in her review, but felt it had less chart potential than Black or White. She wrote, "This is a subtly different mix from the album track. Slightly edgier, just emphasizing the anger which gapes like an infinite black pit under the funky, wildly ecstatic percussion and popping bass lines. Not only is this sound supremely confident, swimming straight up the current 70s feel, pitched right on the pulse of what is relevant in music today, but Harley's whole tone is thrusting forward in the direction to where sound will be in the 80s. Mick Farron of the NME believed that the song sound like Springsteen with a little more of Bob Dylan's phrasing. He also noted how the fast, jumping, almost neo-temps drumming leads into a bizarro psychedelic guitar solo. The Lincolnshire Standard described it as another highly commercial single from Cockney Rebel, led by the talented Steve Harley. Roxana Reed of the Neath Guardian commented, "Bearing olive branches, peace and contentment, Harley is back with White Dove. Perhaps this one will get no further than Black or White. Certainly not a Judy teen. Excellent though." A reviewer for St. Andrew's Citizen believed it would be a medium hit and held greater hopes for it commercially compared to the previous single, Black or White. They did not consider it to be as strong as Cockney Rebel's earlier work, but noted it has a certain lyrical quality and an angry, biting edge to it. They highlighted the superb production and the punchy and straight-ahead instrumentation, with a funkified bass guitar line soaring over a restrained but vicious percussion section, and believed Harley vocalizes well, although his lyrics are a bit on the pretentious side. Jim Green of Trouser Press noted the B-side, "Throw Your Soul Down Here," to be a moody entreaty. In a review of Timeless Flight, Stuart Parker, for his high pop column in the Irish Times, criticized the song for being aimless and tuneless. Graham Scott of the Evening Times, Little Falls, New York, considered the song to be musically similar to the Rolling Stones' "Sympathy for the Devil." He added, "What it's all about I'm not sure, but the music's certainly good." In a 2003 review of Timeless Flight, Martin Aston of Q felt the song's borderline poppy chorus is scuppered by skittish, borderline jazz rock flourishes. White Dove, 537 Throw Your Soul Down Here 4.047-inch single UK promo in Australia. White Dove edited version 4.15 Throw Your Soul Down Here 4.04. Steve Harley vocals, guitar Jim Cregan, guitar, backing vocals Duncan Mackay, keyboards George Ford, bass, backing vocals Stuart Elliott, drums Lindsay Elliott, congas Throw Your Soul Down Here Steve Harley, vocals, acoustic guitar Herbie Flowers, double bass B. They. Robertson, piano Stuart Elliott, drums Yvonne Keeley, backing vocals production Steve Harley, producer Peter Kelsey, engineer on White Dove Tony Clark, engineer and remix engineer on White Dove Chris Blair, mastering on White Dove. And now a new story begins. Reading Half Marathon. The Reading Half Marathon, currently known as the Unleashed Performance Reading Half Marathon for sponsorship reasons, is a half-marathon road running event held on the streets of the English town of Reading, first held in 1983. The race is normally held on a Sunday in March or early April of each year. The race is open to everyone from fun runner to elite athlete, and was one of the first town races to include wheelchair athletes. The 2024 race was held on 14th of April. The 2025 race is scheduled to be held on 23rd of March. History: the race was first run on 13th of March 1983 and has been run every year since, with the exceptions of 2001, 2018, and 2020. From 2003 to 2018, the race was organized by Sweatshop, the chain of running equipment shops founded by Chris Brasher in 1971. From 2019, the race was organized by Gold Line Events, who also organized the Econobank Robin Hood Marathon events and Go Girl, Brighton and Hove. Since 2021, the race has been sponsored by Unleashed Performance, promoters of fitness centers, nutritional products, and performance wear. Previously headline sponsors have included Digital, A6, Mizuno, Vitality, and Sage. In 2001, the race was canceled due to restrictions imposed during the 2001 outbreak of foot-and-mouth disease. In 2018, the race was canceled due to heavy overnight snowfall. The 2020 edition of the race was canceled due to the coronavirus pandemic, with all entries automatically transferred to 2021, and all registrants given the option of transferring their entry to another runner or to 2022. For similar reasons, the 2021 edition of the race was postponed to November of that year. The Reading Half Marathon has had several courses over its life. The inaugural race in 1983 and several subsequent races used University of Reading's White Knights campus for both the start and finish. Other early courses involved use of the South Reading Leisure Center and the Rivermead Sports Center on the banks of the River Thames as start and slash or finish, but recent races have used Green Park Business Park and the adjacent Mage Ski Stadium, both to the south of Reading, for these purposes. The current course starts in Green Park Business Park, which it loops before proceeding eastwards through Whitley Wood to the White Knights campus, which lies between the 4-mile, 6.4 kilometers, and 5-mile, 8.0 kilometers markers. The route then heads north, passing close to the ruins of Reading Abbey and through the Abbey Gateway, before traversing the town center between the 6-mile, 9.7 kilometers, and 8-mile, 13 kilometers markers. Leaving the town center by Oxford Road and a steep climb up Russell Street, the course then loops around West Reading until the 11-mile, 18 kilometers marker. The course then heads back south to the Mage Ski Stadium, where it finishes within the stadium. The current male course record is 61 minutes 19 seconds by Patrick Mackow in 2008. The female record is 69 minutes 35 seconds, set by Liz Yelling in 2008. The male wheelchair record is 45 minutes 59 seconds, set by David Weir in 2006. While the female wheelchair record is 65 minutes 17 seconds, set by Mel Nishials in 2015. Our next topic tonight is Ryan Sharp. Ryan Sharp is a Scottish former racing driver and team manager. He raced in the FIA GT Championship in 2007, with Jet Alliance Racing in their lead number 33 Aston Martin DBR9, with XF1 driver Carl Wendlinger as his teammate. Sharp was also the 2003 German Formula Renault champion. He is currently the director of High-Tech Racing. Career history: Sharp's career began in karting. After winning a number of local and national karting events, his talent was spotted by Dutch businessman Klaas Zwart. Zwart funded Ryan's first season of car racing in Junior Formula Ford. Ryan progressed well despite limited funding to compete, and in 2002 moved from Formula Ford to the Formula Renault Championship, a slicks and wings series, as compared to Formula Ford, which does not allow aerodynamic wings. Formula Renault Sharp's first season in Formula Renault was in the UK, with the John Village Automotive team. He finished 6th in the championship. Ironically, his consistency in finishing every race in the points dropped him to 6th due to the Formula Renault system of dropping your lowest score through the season, meaning Ryan had to drop points while those around him dropped a zero they had scored during the season. For 2003, Sharp moved out of the United Kingdom to race in Formula Renault in Germany with the Genzer Motorsport team. The move paid off handsomely, and with a lot of work and input by Genzer Motorsport, Ryan won the championship by 40 points and performed well in the Formula Renault Masters event at Donington in October 2003 by winning the first of the 2 races and finishing 3rd in the second. He was leading the second race, but a backmarker caused a red flag, and on countback Sharp was classified third. Accomplished British racer Lewis Hamilton came over to Germany during the season to race with the German Formula Renault Grid. Sharp won both of the races, and Hamilton finished 9th and 8th respectively. Sharp also took part in a round of the Italian Formula Renault Championship at Spa, in Belgium. Running in another competitive field, considered by some to be the most competitive Renault Championship in the world. At a circuit new to him in the pouring rain, Sharp went on to win race 1 by 12 seconds and was on course to win the second until he made an error and damaged his car, failing to finish that race but performing well under the wet weather conditions. Formula Renault V6 2004 saw Sharp continue his relationship with the highly rated Genzer Motorsport team, but moving up to the Formula Renault V6 Euro Cup. The season started quite well, when he finished third and first at the first weekend, third in race 1 after spinning at turn 1 and dropping right to the back of the field, and then achieving 2 second places at the following races in Valencia. In the course of one of the 2 races, Sharp appeared to have an invincible lead of 4 seconds in the race with 1 lap to go. However, the 4-second lead was lost in the last lap, allowing Sharp to finish second. Losing places during the last section of the races was common for Ryan during this season, and it was thought to be related to a general lack of fitness and mounting driver nerves towards the end of the race. Sharp had a lot to focus on and learn, and an amount of inexperience at this level meant his tires were being worked too hard, and he lost pace at the end of both races. As a result, he was passed by Damien Passini and Robbie Kerr, who won these races. Nevertheless, these first 4 rounds left him with a commanding lead at the head of the championship. The season moved to Magny Cours, where Sharp consolidated his championship lead. At the F1 support race at Monaco, a car failure caused him a loss of valuable points in the championship. A disappointing performance due to a loss in the family at BR Renault followed, reducing Sharp's lead as a contender. Eventually, Sharp lost the championship to Swiss/French driver Giorgio Mondini by 22 points. Sharp moved up to the new GP2 series in 2005 with David Price Racing, a team he had raced against in 2004 and who were very impressed with his performance. The season began in Imola, where the cars had teething trouble with clutches. In the second round at Barcelona, Sharp was on course for a third-place finish when his car failed, forcing him to start at the back of the grid for the second race. In this race, he set the fastest lap and gained 1 point. A series of disappointing performances followed, which could be attributed to the team being poorly engineered and set up. With his hopes diminished, he returned to the team he knew and trusted. Leaving the GP2 series, he returned to Genzer Motorsport to compete in the last few rounds of the Formula Renault 3/5 Championship, and almost immediately his performances improved. This demonstrated that the David Price racing car used in the GP2 series was not a competitive car, and that Genzer Motorsport was a top team. Sharp was replaced at DPR by 2004 F Renault V6 champion Giorgio Mondini, who also struggled to get anything out of the car. Sharp's career took a new direction in 2006, signing for the Italian JAS Motorsport team to contest the World Touring Car Championship, running as an independent in the Yokohama Independent Trophy. He impressed many people in this season, becoming the first independent driver to score an overall podium position in the season, finishing third overall in Race 1 at Puebla, Mexico. Sharp won a number of races during the season, class victories, the most memorable being one of the races at Brands Hatch, UK, where he won in the pouring rain, underlining his wet weather driving skills. He was on course to finish second in the championship behind Dutchman Tom Coronel, but had to miss the last 3 rounds of the championship due to budget issues. At the end of the year, he won the European Touring Car Cup in a Seat Leon for GR Asia. Sharp moved again in 2007 to the FIA GT Championship with Austrian team Jet Alliance Racing, who were only in their second season of competition. The season began in Zhuhai in China, where the car finished 9th. This was followed by 2 fourth-place finishes at Silverstone and Bucharest. The improvement in form continued to the next race in Monza, where the duo won a dramatic race. Oschersleben held no such luck as the car was hit at the start of the race, dropping him to the back, where he eventually retired. The last race they took part in was the total 24 hours of Spa, in which his car qualified second on the grid and ran very well. He was leading at the 6-hour mark, and so was awarded half points for a race win which amounted to 5 points. However, the car retired around 40 minutes after this, and the duo lost more points in the championship race. A strong finish to the season, including 2 further wins in Adria in the night race, and by teammate Zolder in the 10th and final round. This resulted in Sharp and teammate Wendlinger shoot up the standings to finish second in the championship, 4 points behind eventual champion Tomas Bayagai. Later career, after finishing car racing, Sharp returned to local kart racing in Britain, winning several Scottish and British championships during this time. He retired fully at the end of 2017 to focus on his 7-year-old son Aston, who started karting professionally. Complete Formula Renault 2. 0 UK results key. Races in bold indicate pole position. Races in italics indicate fastest lap. Complete Formula Renault 2. 0 Germany results key. Races in bold indicate pole position. Races in italics indicate fastest lap. Complete Formula Renault 2. 0 Italia results key. Races in bold indicate pole position. Races in italics indicate fastest lap. Complete Formula Renault 2. 0 Eurocup results key. Races in bold indicate pole position. Races in italics indicate fastest lap. Complete Formula Renault V6 Eurocup results key. Races in bold indicate pole position. Races in italics indicate fastest lap. Complete GP2 Series results key. Races in bold indicate pole position. Races in italics indicate fastest lap. Complete Formula Renault 3.5 Series results key. Races in bold indicate pole position. Races in italics indicate fastest lap. Driver did not finish the race, but was classified as he completed more than 90% of the race distance. Complete World Touring Car Championship results key. Races in bold indicate pole position. Races in italics indicate fastest lap. See also 2007 FIA GT Championship season, Jet Alliance Racing Carl Wendlinger. Let us drift gently now toward collecting. The hobby of collecting includes seeking, locating, acquiring, organizing, cataloging, displaying, storing, and maintaining items that are of interest to an individual collector. Collections differ in a wide variety of respects, most obviously in the nature and scope of the objects contained, but also in purpose, presentation, and so forth. The range of possible subjects for a collection is practically unlimited, and collectors have realized a vast number of these possibilities in practice, although some are much more popular than others. In collections of manufactured items, the objects may be antique or simply collectible. Antiques are collectible items at least 100 years old, while other collectibles are arbitrarily recent. The word vintage describes relatively old collectibles that are not yet antiques. Collecting is a childhood hobby for some people, but for others, it is a lifelong pursuit or something started in adulthood. Collectors who begin early in life often modify their goals when they get older. Some novice collectors start by purchasing items that appeal to them, and then slowly work at learning how to build a collection, while others prefer to develop some background in the field before starting to buy items. The emergence of the Internet as a global forum for different collectors has resulted in many isolated enthusiasts finding each other. The most obvious way to categorize collections is by the type of objects collected. Most collections are of manufactured commercial items, but natural objects such as birds' eggs, butterflies, rocks, and seashells can also be the subject of a collection. For some collectors, the criterion for inclusion might not be the type of object, but some incidental property such as the identity of its original owner. Some collectors are generalists with very broad criteria for inclusion, while others focus on a subtopic within their area of interest. Some collectors accumulate arbitrarily many objects that meet the thematic and quality requirements of their collection. Others, called completists or completionists, aim to acquire all items in a well-defined set that can in principle be completed, and others seek a limited number of items per category. For example, one representative item per year of manufacture or place of purchase. Collecting items by country, for example, one collectible per country, is very common. The monetary value of objects is important to some collectors, but irrelevant to others. Some collectors maintain objects in pristine condition, while others use the items they collect. After a collectible has been purchased, its retail price no longer applies, and its value is linked to what is called the secondary market. There is no secondary market for an item unless someone is willing to buy it, and an object's value is whatever the buyer is willing to pay. Depending on age, condition, supply, demand, and other factors, individuals, auctioneers, and secondary retailers may sell a collectible for either more or less than what they originally paid for it. Special or limited edition collectibles are created with the goal of increasing demand and value of an item due to its rarity. A price guide is a resource such as a book or website that lists typical selling prices. Products often become more valuable with age. The term antique generally refers to manufactured items made over 100 years ago, although in some fields, such as antique cars, the time frame is less stringent. For antique furniture, the limit has traditionally been set in the 1830s. Collectors and dealers may use the word vintage to describe older collectibles that are too young to be called antiques, including Art Deco and Art Nouveau items, Carnival and Depression glass, and so on items which were once everyday objects but may now be collectible, as almost all examples produced have been destroyed or discarded, are called ephemera. Psychological factors can play a role in both the motivation for keeping a collection and the impact it has on the collector's life. These factors can be positive or negative. The hobby of collecting often goes hand in hand with an interest in the objects collected and what they represent. For example, collecting postcards may reflect an interest in different places and cultures. For this reason, collecting can have educational benefits, and some collectors even become experts in their field. Maintaining a collection can be a relaxing activity that counteracts the stress of life, while providing a purposeful pursuit which prevents boredom. The hobby can lead to social connections between people with similar interests and the development of new friendships. It has also been shown to be particularly common among academics. Collecting for most people is a choice, but for some it can be a compulsion, sharing characteristics with obsessive hoarding. When collecting is passed between generations, it might sometimes be that children have inherited symptoms of obsessive, compulsive disorder. Collecting can sometimes reflect a fear of scarcity or of discarding something and then later regretting it. Carl Jung speculated that the widespread appeal of collecting is connected to the hunting and gathering that was once necessary for human survival. Collecting is also associated with memory by association and the need for the human brain to catalog and organize information and give meaning to one's actions. Besides emotional and cognitive motivations, the reward system of the brain plays an important role in collecting. Anticipation from anticipated object acquisition, especially if there is rarity or uncertainty, can elicit dopamine release, reinforcing the need to continue acquiring. This effect has been greatly elaborated in contemporary collecting cultures related to the blind box or a limited series, in which unpredictability increases excitement and emotional investment. Over time, the collection might be included in the person's identity as such and be a manifestation of taste, status, or community affiliation. In this manner, collecting influences not only behavioral but also self-concept modification, making this line between hobby and psychological attachment quite blurred. Collecting is a practice with a very old cultural history. In Mesopotamia, collecting practices have been noted among royalty and elites as far back as the 3rd millennium BCE. The Egyptian Ptolemaic dynasty collected books from all over the known world at the Library of Alexandria. The Medici family in Renaissance Florence made the first effort to collect art by private patronage. This way artists could be free for the first time from the money given by the church and kings. This citizenship tradition continues today with the work of private art collectors. Many of the world's popular museums, from the Metropolitan in New York City to the Thyssen in Madrid or the France Mayor in Mexico City, have collections formed by the collectors that donated them to be seen by the general public. The collecting hobby is a modern descendant of the Cabinet of Curiosities, which was common among scholars with the means and opportunities to acquire unusual items from the 16th century onwards. Planned collecting of ephemeral publications goes back at least to George Matheson in the reign of Charles I, and Samuel Pepys in that of Charles Roman II. Collecting engravings and other prints by those whose means did not allow them to buy original works of art also goes back many centuries. The progress in 18th century Paris of collecting both works of art and of curiosité, dimly echoed in the English curios, and the origins in Paris, Amsterdam, and London of the modern art market, have been increasingly well documented and studied since the mid-19th century. The involvement of larger numbers of people in collecting activities came with the prosperity and increased leisure for some in the later 19th century in industrial countries. That was when collecting such items as antique china, furniture, and decorative items from Oriental countries became established. The first price guide was the Stanley Gibbons Catalog, issued in November 1865. The history of collecting is chronicled in the book Lock, Stock, and Barrel, The Story of Collecting. This well-researched book on collecting, written by Elizabeth and Douglas Rigby, was published by J. B. Lippincott & Co., a major publisher in Philadelphia. An important book as well as a delightful one. I recommend it urgently as the best all-around volume in its field, wrote Vincent Starrett of the Chicago Tribune in a review of the book. In addition to being reviewed by newspapers, magazines, and journals, such as the Chicago Tribune, the New York Times, the Saturday Review, New York History, the Pennsylvania Magazine of History, and the American Scholar, the book also has been cited in academic studies on collecting. See also Antique Toys Show Collectible Ephemera Hoarding Scientific Collection Category, Collector's Bibliography Blom, Philip to Have and to Hold, An Intimate History of Collectors and Collecting. ISBN 1-58567 to 377 to 3 Castruccio, Enrico I Collezionisti, Usi Costumi Emozioni. Cremona, Persico Edizioni ISBN 88-87207 to 59 Cheney, Edward, ed. The Evolution of English Collecting. New Haven, Yale University Press. Schulz, Charles M. Charlie Brown's Super Book of Things to Do and Collect, based on the Charles M. Schulz characters. New York, Random House, 1984, paperback, ISBN 0-394-83165-9. Hardcover in library binding ISBN 0-394-93165-3. Redman, Samuel J. Bone Rooms, From Scientific Racism to Human Prehistory in Museums. Cambridge, Harvard University Press. Rigby, Douglas and Rigby, Elizabeth. Lock, Stock and Barrel, The Story of Collecting. Philadelphia, J. B. Lippincott. 9,781,299,010,123. 1,299,010,121, Shamash. Jack, George V's Obsession. A King and His Stamps, Shamash. Jack, The Sociology of Collecting, Matheson. Alison, Carmel, Luxury and Legitimation. Royal Collecting in Ancient Mesopotamia. Hampshire, UK. Ashgate Publishing Limited. Vander Grape, Paul, Passion and Profit. Towards an Anthropology of Collecting. Berlin, LIT Verlag. ISBN 3-8258 to 9258 to 1. Next, we turn softly to Parcoblatta fulvescens. Parcoblatta fulvescens, the fulvous wood cockroach, is a species of cockroach endemic to the United States and possibly Canada that measures around 13 millimeters (0.5 in) long. Description: the male Parcoblatta fulvescens is relatively slender, has long tegmina, outer forewings, and is slightly longer than the female. It is a mostly uniform pale brownish yellow, with sometimes darker pronotum, the plate behind the head and legs, and usually dark brown cercidae, the pair of appendages on its rearmost segment. Its pronotum is subelliptical, nearly elliptical, is widest just behind its middle, and has weakly defined disc-like impressions. The female head and pronotum are usually a pale reddish-brown. Its short tegmina are reddish-brown with paler sides. Its abdominal segments are a darker brown, and its legs and underside are a brownish yellow. The species Utheca eggcase is bean-shaped, very dark brown, and measures about 8.5 millimeters (0.33 in) long by 3.8 millimeters (0.15 in) wide. The edge with a seam is curved and has about 40 small crimps or folds. It is similar to the Utheca of P. virginica, but is larger and has slightly narrower spacing of vertical divisions. Two differently colored forms of the species were regularly collected in Kansas: a dark, olive-gray to brown variety from Riley County, Kansas, and a light, golden brown to tan variety from the slopes of the Flint Hills pastures near Manhattan, Kansas. Similar species, the species was treated by one source in 1910 as a southern variety of Parcoblatta ulleriana, termed P. ulleriana fulvescens, as the males of the two species look very similar. Among their differences are that P. fulvescens has a pale face, longer pronotum with less distinct disc-like impressions, narrower tegmina, and different characteristics in its cercidae and its anal styles, two thread-like processes on the terminal segment of the abdomen. In addition, pre-1917 Arizona records of ulleriana and ulleriana fulvescens refer to Parcoblatta natha. Female specimens of P. fulvescens can be confused with P. virginica and P. lata. Females of P. virginica are on average smaller and less robust, less often have wide coloration differences, normally have a supraanal plate with straight lateral edges that converge in a more acute apex, have a less convex caudal, rear, edge of the sixth dorsal abdominal segment, and have fewer proximal spines of the cephalic femora. Females of P. lata are much larger and more robust, with a more transverse pronotum. Distribution: the distribution of the species includes Ontario, Canada, and the eastern United States, including Alabama, Arkansas, the District of Columbia, Florida, Georgia, Illinois, Indiana, Iowa, Kansas, Maryland, Mississippi, Missouri, New Jersey, New York, North Carolina, South Carolina, Virginia, and Texas. It is not clear if the species is native or adventive in Canada. Habitat: the species has been found in heavy barrier beech forest, in pine barrens undergrowth, both typical or heavy and grassy, on the borders of pine barrens, on swamp edges, in heavy deciduous forest, and in heavy oak woods. In Florida, it has been found in mesic hammock, xeric hammock, scrub and sand hill habitats. Individuals may be found under dead leaves, pine needles, particularly beneath shortleaf pine, logs beneath loose bark, or wandering at night. And now a new story begins. Life, Rue. Life, stylized as L. Phi, formerly Life News, is a Russian pro-government news website owned by Aram Gabrilianov and published by News Media Holding. Its offices are in Moscow. The brand is most commonly associated with the now-defunct Life News channel. Life News, the television channel Life News, and its mobile application were launched in September 2013. The broadcasting licensee for the television channel was Media Content LLC, whose beneficiaries were Aram Gabrilianov and the oil merchant Surgutex. According to the open statistics of Live Internet, the daily audience of the Life News online informational publication in 2013 was 200 to 250,000 viewers. Life News came to prominence by actively covering events in Donbas in 2014, taking a strong pro-Kremlin position. The channel would see its ratings rise through 2014 to a peak of up to 30 million. On July 1, 2014, Life News TV channel broadcast digitally in the Republic of Crimea and Sevastopol as a part of the third regional multiplex. Notable journalists at the channel included Seaman Pegov, who would go on to found the War Gonzo Project. The nascent channel found itself the center of a scandal in July 2014, after they reported in a positive tone that the anti-Ukraine rebels in East Ukraine had shot down a Ukrainian military jet. The jet soon turned out to be a civilian passenger jet, MH17, and Life News quickly moved to delete and erase their initial report, and then produce further reports blaming Ukraine for the fatal shootdown. The channel continued broadcasting as usual, but after the MH17 scandal had taken a reputational hit in Russia and internationally. In September 2014, Ukraine's National Council of Television banned 15 Kremlin-run channels, including Life News, for what they claimed was war propaganda. On December 17, 2014, Life News editor-in-chief Anatoly Suleimanov confirmed large-scale redundancies by January 1, 2015, due to restructuring by the News Media Holding Company. In 2015, News Media cut around 15 to 17% of the employees of Life News. In late 2016, Life News announced that they were removing journalists from their transmissions and switching to a streaming format. On August 18, 2017, the channel announced its closure and stopped broadcasting. According to the strategy of the holding company News Media, they would in future focus on extended streaming on the internet and social networks to replace outmoded TV broadcasting. As such, Life News is defunct. Internet publication Life. RU in 2009, the internet publication of Life News. RU was launched. At the same time, the projects Life Sports and Life Showbiz of the News Media Holding Company were launched, which were both closed in 2016. Life. RU News Media, which controlled the domain of Life. RU had the following owners. 75% of shares was owned by a closed fund, Media Plus, which was associated with the National Media Group, NMG, businessman Yuri Kovalchuk, who is close to Russian President Vladimir Putin. 25% was controlled by General Director Arem Gabrilianov. In 2018, Gabrilianov announced his retirement from Life. RU, according to Medusa and Project Publications, because of a tense relationship with First Deputy Presidential Administration, Alexei Gromov, and the NMG management. In 2016, Life News. RU was renamed as Life. RU and was planned as Russian equivalent of BuzzFeed. The new project merged the former Life News and Super websites. On September 17, 2018, Suleimanov and Life. RU editor-in-chief Alexander Potapov left the project, with Nikita Magutin MASH and Raoul Smyer Life Car leaving at the same time. Arem Gabrilianov returned to News Media as general director, with Arseny Hovhannissian becoming the new chief editor of Life. RU, who previously held a similar position at Izvestia. Radio Life Sound on July 1, 2013, Arem Gabrilianov, the owner of Life, became the general director of the radio station, Russian News Service, RNS, which had been set up in 2001. On July 4, 2016, as part of the reorganization of the Life brand, RSN was renamed as Life Sound. On August 14, 2017, the radio station stopped broadcasting. Ownership Life is owned by General Director Arem Gabrilianov. The Gabrilianovs operate in different sectors of Russian life, from show business to the security services. According to an article in the Moscow Times, an influence on their recent success has been loyalty to the Kremlin. The father, Arem Gabrilianov, refers to President Vladimir Putin as the father of the nation. One of Putin's oldest friends spent $80 million to become a key shareholder in the Gabrilianovs' holding company, News Media, providing it with a flood of cash for investment. Criticism Life News is notable for a servile attitude toward the Kremlin and a proximity to the Russian security services. While broadcasting news about events during the 2014 pro-Russian unrest in Ukraine, Life News was derided for claiming to have found the business card of Dmytro Yarosh at the site of a battle in the Donbas. Ukrainians quickly created an internet meme called the Yarosh business card, Ukrainian. Velize iteka oshaa, Romanized, Vyzitka Yarosha, and called the reporting propaganda worse than that of Nazi Germany. When the number on the card was called, it reached an unaffiliated elderly woman, casting further doubts on the claims of Life News. In September 2014, the National Television Council of Ukraine banned 15 channels operated by the Kremlin for alleged war propaganda, including Life News. In September 2014, YouTube blocked the Life News video channel due to third-party complaints about copyright infringements. In the wake of the Charlie Hebdo shooting in January 2015, it aired a piece from one of its regular contributors, an expert political analyst, that said the terrorist attack had been carried out by the U.S. against France in order to further an anti-Russian agenda. These claims were treated as little more than conspiracy theories, meant to build pro-Putin support in American media. According to the Security Service of Ukraine, it is a paramilitary organization. Andrew Levis, SBU, called members of the Life News channel specific special operations combat units of information. Famine in Switzerland during the events of the Russian invasion of Ukraine and the stop of Russian gas flow to some European countries. The news portal published an article and a video by the Russian journalist Petrova living in Lausanne claiming Switzerland is preparing for a winter of hunger. In the video, the journalist states that the country could face running out of water and electricity in a couple of days, and the suspension of public transport. As evidence, she shows the information brochure Kluger Rat, not Vorat, by the Federal Office for National Supply, BWL, claiming that this was sent to the entire Swiss population. However, the BWL rejects these claims, stating that this brochure was printed years before and has nothing to do with the current winter. It also was never sent to the entire Swiss population. After the article was published, the journalist published a statement denying the support of any disinformation campaign against Switzerland, and that she was a victim of Russian propaganda herself. She claims a former colleague asked her to make a video about the brochure, and she didn't know that the video was released. Awards Life News Television Channel 2013 Golden Ray, RU, Television Channels. News and Political Journalism category 2014 Big Digit, Business and News Channel category. That is all for tonight. Let the silence settle in. Sleep well.